Brock Purdy threw 4 interceptions.
Yeah.
Tristan, please tell me this is the final nail in the coffin to put the Brock Purdy media hype and MVP hype to bed.
You would think the answer is an automatic yes, but I thought it would be put to bed after the Vikings game, after the Browns game. Remember, I want to remind you, in case you've forgotten, remember, the Brock Purdy MVP hype started, then he had a couple bad games, it completely fell off the radar, and then it picked back up again, okay? I think the only reason it picked back up was because there's no real clear runaway MVP like in years past, otherwise it would have been dead when it should have been. I want to preface this by saying the way I've been talking about Brock Purdy,
you nailed it.
And you too, well, I did nail it, but he's still a good quarterback. Like, I feel like I'm degrading him. He's a top 10 quarterback, okay? A lot of teams would like to have him. He has elite anticipation. He operates at a high level. He sees the field well. He leaves, some meat on the bone a lot of the time, but he's a really good quarterback. However, the MVP discussion was always absurd. You can't be the MVP of the league when you're not the MVP of your own team. But for anyone who hasn't listened, what I said was that Brock Purdy plays good when things are going according to the plan. He mimics Kyle Shanahan. We've seen this from Shanahan's career. When they are on script and they're playing with the lead and they're controlling the game, they're better than anyone in the league. Kyle Shanahan is a wizard when they're able to run the ball and really have you scared of the run, and they're running effectively, and then they can play off of the run with play action and other stuff. They are dominant. They are genuinely unstoppable, like everyone said. However, as we've seen through Shanahan's career, and as we've seen through what Brock Purdy has shown us, the moment they face adversity and they can't just run their offense exactly how they want to, and the moment they get behind or they get in a dogfight, the plan completely falls apart. The train falls off the tracks. That's Shanahan and Purdy. Purdy collapses and he falls apart. I've said that, and tonight, finally, I think more people are going to acknowledge it. 4 interceptions for Brock Purdy, 18 for 32. It was a disaster. McCaffrey actually had a good night. Honestly, I think the bigger story of the game is the Ravens' offensive line dominating the 49ers defense. I mean, Lamar had all night to throw. They just mauled him. It was a complete clinic. But I hope this puts the Purdy thing to bed. He's still a good quarterback, but I'm wrong about a lot of stuff. But this might be the most right I've ever been about a football take.
And if you're ever wondering or questioning if Brock Purdy should be the MVP, you mentioned that you can't be the MVP if you're not the MVP of your team. Do you know who bought the entire offense presence? Christian McCaffrey. Not even the quarterback. It's usually the quarterback that provides the presence, right?
Right.
Well, they did a little thing during the game that McCaffrey bought everybody golf clubs. And I'm like, okay, well, this should tell you something. I know Purdy is not making a ton of money. He's making, I think, less than $1 million.
True.
Which that's absurd. I think he should get a bump in pay, and he probably will. But if just look at it in simple terms, like if you're not buying the whole team golf clubs, then you're probably not the MVP.
Right.
Amongst other things, but that's probably a red flag as well. Secondly, you mentioned they only work well in a positive game plan, right? I like to call it Operation Positive Script. And if that goes wrong, then everything else goes to the wayside. Nobody knows what to do. Point in case. The first 3 plays that Baltimore ran went positive for San Francisco. It was a 3 and out, their first drive. It looked good for the 49ers. They drove downfield unstoppable until Brock Purdy threw a terrible interception
in the end
zone.
Yep.
In the end zone. About to score in the red zone, and he throws the worst pick of the night, in my opinion. And then that sent the script completely 180, and now you're at Operation What Do We Do?
Well, it let Baltimore get in a position to take control of the game, because if the 49ers punch it in for a touchdown there, and then remember you had the wacky safety where Lamar. And when that happened, I thought the 49ers were going to win the game. Even though I picked the Ravens, I thought the Ravens would control them and kind of win by 10 or more. When that happened, when Lamar tripped on the referee and threw the thing, got the intentional grounding for the safety, I was like, oh, okay, it's like the Raiders game earlier. It's going to be one of those games. The 49ers are going to get rolling. If they had gotten those 5 points they got early on top of the 7, all of a sudden, you've got a double-digit lead. You're in control. You can take the pressure off your offense. Instead, They allowed Baltimore to get rolling. Their protection just gave Lamar time. He found Zay Flowers up like 9 times, I think 70 yards. And then Baltimore scored 13 points in the second quarter and really never looked back. They scored 17 in the third and shut San Francisco out. It was really a complete domination after the first quarter for Baltimore.
When you talk about great teams in the NFL, is this the only one that stands out to you?
The Ravens?
Yeah.
Yes. I think they're the only team I would give the elite tag right now. Right? There's not another.
Yeah. No,
there's good teams, but there's no one that looks like this. You would say the 49ers, but we've seen them do this a couple times.
Well, right. Yeah, there's good teams scattered all throughout the league, but as far as greatness goes, consistent greatness, I think that the Ravens, they take that trophy there. I think there's other teams that in the next maybe week or two we'll see become maybe elite teams. But as it stands right now, yeah, the Ravens, man, like they just, I would be terrified to face them.
Absolutely. I do want to piggyback off that briefly, though. That doesn't necessarily mean, it's over, they're going to win the Super Bowl. Because we've seen all the time, the Super Bowl a lot of times comes down to who gets hot at the right time. Who gets rolling, the last 2 weeks of the season. Like when the Giants beat the undefeated Patriots, they were a wild card team. They just got rolling, got it hot, and they matched up well against the Patriots. Football's like fights. It's all about matchups. You know what I mean? A great kickboxer is not going to do well against an elite wrestler, okay? Even though he might maul the rest of the division, he goes up against that wrestler, he's done. So football's the same way. Matchups make football games. The Ravens are clearly the best team in football. I think it's them, a gap, and everyone else. But we've never seen Lamar go on a deep playoff run and really lead his team through the playoffs. That doesn't mean he can't do it. You know what I mean? There was a time we hadn't seen Mahomes do that, and then he did it, and just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean it won't happen. But that is the interesting factor. Just because they're dominant now doesn't mean they'll run the table in the playoffs. Because you look at the AFC, the Dolphins, even though I'm lower on them than some people, they could easily beat them. The Bills could beat them. Obviously, they could lose to the Browns. I mean, because they're divisional rivals. That would be the team. If I'm Baltimore, I don't want to go anywhere near Cleveland. Those are the teams I look at. I don't think it's the Chiefs right now. I think it's Ravens, Browns, Dolphins, and Bills. I think those are the 4 teams in the AFC playing the best football, right? And no one else even enters that pantheon.
No, I completely agree with you. Also, you mentioned that Lamar's never led his team through a playoff run. Well, he's actually healthy this year, so that's a really big ingredient in leading your team through the playoffs.
True. Quickly before we move on to the next topic, Ravens are who they are. We're not surprised. I think Lamar is going to take away MVP votes at this point. It's his to lose, as it should be, even though his numbers aren't the prototypical QB MVP numbers. If we're not going to give it to a running back, like I would love if McCaffrey was MVP or Tyreek Hill, but we're probably going to give it to a quarterback, so Lamar. Those teams I just mentioned, Ravens, Browns, Dolphins, Bills, any chance our AFC representative in the Super Bowl is not one of those teams?
No, slim to none at this point.
Yeah, I agree. The only one you would even give a little bit of chance to would be Kansas City. And I mean, come on, who are we kidding?
Not after today.
Not after today. Agree.